Welcome to the NEWSMAKER, coming to you today from the World Economic Forum in Davos. Agriculture is probably the oldest industry in the world, but today it is undergoing the biggest transformations since the beginning of mankind. One of the top heavyweights in the global agribusiness and commodity trading, who rarely speaks to the media, is about to join me now. Thank you so much for joining us, Dave MacLennan, CEO and Chairman of Cargill.
Thanks, Martina. Great to be with you.
We are living in a digital age. How is agriculture changing? What kind of transformation are you seeing?
You know, farmers have always, at least in North America, have always embraced technology. I mean, you could see an iPad in a harvester years ago, but with the evolution of digitalization and analytics, it's just coming faster and it's more widespread, I think.
So what does this mean for the normal farmer, not just in the US, but globally? How can he or she cope with these new realities?
I think it depends on the geography, but certainly in North and South America and Western Europe and increasingly in Asia, I think these are tools to make them more productive, to make them more efficient, to understand their resource usage. It's going to make farming better, I think.
Smart agriculture is the new kid on the block. Is it just a buzzword, or is there something really substantial behind it?
I think there's something really substantial behind it. You could argue that agriculture has been an industry which has adopted technology maybe at a slower pace than some other industries, but there's a lot of startups. Actually, we have a partnership, an investment in Minneapolis, our home city, with something called Techstars. So we look and mentor ag and food tech startups.
Agriculture is still a very unproductive industry, right? So how can farmers around the world boost their output?
I don't know that I would characterize it as an unproductive industry. Again, it depends on the geography, but North American farmers and increasingly South American farmers as well have been able to produce and have greater yields. If you look at history over the last 50 years, they've been more efficient and more productive with fairly modest use of land and water. So productivity in developed ag economies is pretty good.
And so you think that it is still possible to be a farmer nowadays?
It's still possible. It's a tough business. I mean, it's an outdoor sport, as they say. And you've got the variability of the weather, and with climate volatility, it's going to be even more challenging. But I think it's not for the faint of heart, but farmers have a lot of respect from our company.
And how can you make sure that AI, blockchain, all the new innovations and technology actually help support these farmers and boost their productivity as well?
Well, those are our customers, and so that's what we consider to be our job at Cargill, which is to bring them technological tools such as AI or blockchain. For example, we've got an investment in a technology which listens to the moisture content of the soil, so that a farmer can stop irrigating, use less water, just by the listening device, a technology device, which says, okay, the soil is saturated, you don't need to water anymore. So it's good for the environment and it's good for the farmer.
The agriculture business is facing multiple challenges like climate change, the changing consumer habits, U.S. China trade war as well. Which would you say is the biggest challenge for the business at this point?
Well, maybe all of the above. I mean, I think the U.S. China trade issue is temporary. It's not going to last forever, but things like technology, weather is always a variability, climate change, climate volatility. It's not for the faint of heart. And so that's what makes it so interesting, is you have all these challenges, but I think the integration of technology into productivity, into environmental responsibility, I think that's one of the greatest opportunities for the ag industry today.
So far, what would you say was the biggest impact from the U.S. China trade war on your industry?
Well, it's been tough on the U.S. farm economy. So prices are low. They're perhaps, one could speculate, $2 lower than where they might be. But think about the volume slowdown, meaning 30 million metric tons of soybeans went from the U.S. to China, and it went to zero almost overnight. Now, some trade has picked up again with this 90-day cooling off period, but it's kept prices low. But it's also meant supplies have increased. So storage silos on the ground, there's a lot of soybeans waiting to be sold or waiting to be moved, and so that does have an impact on the farm economy.
And what makes you so confident and optimistic that we might see an end in the U.S.-China trade war and a relief for the agriculture industry?
Well, I think you can choose to be confident and optimistic, or you can choose to be pessimistic and down, and I'm going to choose the former. I'm going to choose that between the two sides, they'll find a way forward that'll benefit the farm economy, that'll benefit the relationship between China and the U.S. So it's a matter of choice.
With all of these massive challenges, how can an agriculture business like yours still generate revenues?
You have to be resilient. You have to be looking, like any company in any industry, you have to be looking, can I change and how can I lead the pace of change? And so one of the things that we've talked about a lot in Cargill is let's not react to change, let's lead it, let's get out in front of it. And I've often said the pace of change will never be slower than it is today. So we've got to move fast, but I think a lot of it is culture and a lot of it is embracing changes in our business model.
It must have been tough, though, to change the corporate culture and the mindset as well, because it's such an old industry and not everybody is up for this change, right?
Well, it's true. I mean, it's an old industry, and we're 153 years old by American standards. That's an old company. But nonetheless, I think people are resilient, and I think we have a lot of diversity in our company of people who like change. Some people hate it. We have people from other industries. So I think that as the diversity of Cargill has increased over time, I think the embracing of change has improved as well.
Coming back to financials, you made revenues of some 110 billion US dollars in 2017. Mm-hmm. What is your profit and revenue outlook for this year?
I think if agriculture prices stay flat and they're slightly lower because of the trade war, then our revenues, a lot of our revenues vary because of agricultural prices, wheat, corn, soybeans. So for us, sales isn't as big an indicator as it might be for other companies because it's so impacted by commodity prices. But we're optimistic for the year in terms of profits.
Talking again about, the changing business models, it seems that everything is going beyond digitization and the commodities business and the food business is moving from just that to a more food and ingredients and organic products kind of model, right? So how are you changing your business model exactly?
We're becoming more involved in value-added products and alternative proteins. Consumers want choices. Some consumers say, I want to get my protein from plant sources, not just animal protein. Or I want products that are healthier for me, that I know how they were made. I want more transparency in the supply chain. They want to trust the food supply chain as well. So for us, it's meant moving more aggressively into value-added products.
What kind of new products are you having in the pipeline at this point?
Well, it's a joint venture, as you mentioned, for pea protein, so plant-based protein. And so we've got everything from powders for energy bars, and it's also ingredients for sports drinks that help with faster recovery for after exercising. But I think that's a big opportunity for us is what different forms of protein can we produce? Because that's what consumers want.
But Cargill is still the biggest beef producer in the world at this point. So does it mean that you're moving away from meat production towards more vegetarian and vegan industries?
So we're not officially the biggest. We're one of the biggest in the U.S., but we're not the biggest in the world. That's held by JBS, a Brazilian company. But it means that people want choices and they want to be able to get their protein from other places. So we've also invested in a company called Memphis Meats, which is cellular production of meat. So I don't think the beef industry is going to go away, but certainly people want choices of how they can consume protein.
Some experts and industry analysts are expecting the disappearance of some of the dinosaurs in the agri industry because they think that they cannot cope with all of these challenges. What's your view on that? Will we see more consolidation?
Yeah, I think we will see more consolidation. Again, it's an industry that's changing quickly because of technology, and consolidation is a natural form of evolution, whether it's in species or whether it's in businesses. So certainly, agriculture is not immune from that.
Does this mean that we can expect any major deal in the pipeline from your side?
Well, in the history of Cargill, or at least the Cargill that I've been involved with, there's never been a year when we haven't done at least one or many acquisitions, and there's never been a year when we haven't done a divestiture. So it's a way of life. For any company that's vibrant and needs to grow, you've got to be looking for acquisitions.
So where are you looking for acquisitions this year, and what size can we expect?
I think that we are focusing a lot on Asia, particularly China and Southeast Asia. We're opportunistic. If something came along at the right price in North America or South America, certainly we would consider it. But I think Asia is a particular focus for us in terms of making new acquisitions and new investments.
Innovation is a key topic for you, as we mentioned. How much are you planning to invest in innovation this year? Can you give any rough estimate?
We don't quantify how much we spend on innovation. I mean, it's in the hundreds of millions, as you would expect from a company like ours. But innovation in the form of research and development, new products, new ingredients, technology, new ways to deliver information and to enable our businesses to be faster and more agile, and then digitalization, access to data. So all of those have forms of innovation to them.
Talking about the mega trends, in the food industry, we mentioned some of them. What kind of, superfoods and slow foods and new products do you think can we expect? What are the big trends going forward?
Well, we mentioned pea protein, so alternative forms of protein. Perhaps we'll start looking at forms of insect protein, which is something that Asians are very comfortable consuming, less so with Westerners.
What do you think about insects?
I've had them. They're good. Yeah, especially if you cover them with a little bit of Cargill chocolate.
Wow.
Then they're particularly delicious.
I'll need to try.
Exactly. I think that's one, but we also, with micronutrition, so we bought a company a year ago in the U.S. called Diamond V, which is micronutrition for livestock, which helps their digestive process. It makes them more efficient. They produce higher quality products. And we also have a micronutrition product for human beings as well. So human nutrition, superfoods, micronutrition, I think that's a great growth opportunity for us.
Let's talk about the business, Dave. And Cargill obviously is one of the largest privately held corporations in the world. There's been a lot of speculation about IPO plans. Is there anything new you can tell us about IPO?
No, we love being private. It allows us to be forward-thinking, to be patient with our capital. Our family owners have a lot of pride in their company. I mean, this is personal for them. Their name's on the door. Their relatives were the founders of this company. They're very proud of it, and they're very committed to long-term private ownership.
What would be in there for you if you went public? Do you think it would be an advantage?
No. Well, I mean, like anything else, there is a positive and a negative, and certainly we don't have access to public equity markets because we're private. But the family owners leave the majority of their capital in the company for us to reinvest, and we have access to debt markets. But for us, we've been quite competitive and quite successful being private, and we intend to continue that.
And Cargill is owned by the Cargill and MacLennan families.
Correct.
Some 14 billionaires actually own the company. Is there any change in ownership that is planned, or will you just keep the status quo?
We'll keep the status quo. As I said, as a family-owned company, they're a stable and a long-term owner. They're wonderful people to work for.
Geneva is your headquarters here in Europe, basically, after Minneapolis. So what is your view on the commodity trading hub that Geneva is right now? How do you see its shape and its future?
Well, it's a place I lived in for a couple of years. I mean, as you mentioned, it is a place where there's a lot of trading talent. It's a hospitable place to do business. Switzerland can be expensive, as you know. And we also have a hub in Belgium, in Mechelen, where we have an R&D center, and we also have some manufacturing sites. But we're committed to Geneva at least for the foreseeable future.
What is the main advantage of being in Geneva? Is it because other commodity traders are there, or is it because of Nestle, for example, that is another big food company? Yeah,
Nestle is a customer of ours. We sell them cocoa and chocolate, and as you mentioned, they're right down the lake from us in Vevey. It's centrally located. I mean, Europe is a fantastic place to manage a global business. So you've got the access to Asia in the morning and North America and South America in the afternoon. So it's well located. We have a long history there. We've been there since the 1950s. So it's a great place to do business.
Let's talk a little bit about food security as well and feeding the global population, right? At the moment, we have a world population of some 7 billion people. By 2050, this is expected to grow to 9 billion people. How can we feed, a world of 9 billion people, Dave?
That's a great question, and that's one that, that's at the core of our mission, to nourish the world in a safe, responsible, and sustainable way. So it's got to involve sustainability, responsible use of the Earth's resources, land, water, the air. And it also involves technology. How can we become more efficient with the resources that we have to make food to feed the next 2 billion people that are coming? but it also really depends on trade.
And
We got to
why-
move the food.
Right, and why do you think there are still so many malnourished people in the world and people dying from hunger? What is substantially and fundamentally wrong?
I think sometimes it's the lack of open trade. It's the inability of food to get from where it's produced to where it's consumed. I think it's also ingrained poverty in continents like Africa, where more than half the farmers are women, where they haven't had the same opportunities and same advantages of technology and farmer training. So I think it's a combination of things.
So it's a supply chain and logistics problem as well. Are you confident and optimistic that blockchain, for example, could help alleviate this problem?
I am, and so we formed a blockchain with Archer Daniels, with Bunge, Dreyfus, and Kofco called BEAT, Bringing Efficiency to Agriculture Trading. And it's starting off with creating a blockchain solution for the shipping of dry bulk goods. There's some staggering statistic that every week, and maybe I got it wrong, but you'll get my point, 250,000 paper documents are processed in the name of shipping. And so if you can create greater efficiency that allows more efficient ocean traffic, which moves food to where it's needed, that's one of the many ways in which we can help feed the world.
Now, Dave, people in Switzerland are often concerned about the commodity trading business because sometimes it's very intransparent and a little bit in the dark.
Yeah.
What's your view on that?
I don't think people should be concerned. It's a vital part of the supply chain. We use it quite frequently and quite significantly for hedging. So in other words, the ability to lock in prices, maybe it's for the products that we're going to buy, or maybe it's for our farmer customers. But trading is a vital part of any agricultural supply chain, and it's something that I don't think people should be concerned about.
Does it maybe mean, though, that businesses and people like you should engage more with stakeholders, NGO, and the general public?
Well, we do engage quite a bit with the general public and with NGOs. So we have several partnerships around the world with organizations like CARE in the U.S., the Nature Conservancy, the World Wildlife Foundation. So we have several very close partnerships. We want to be transparent. We want the world to know who we are, our purpose, that we're doing good things, bringing food. We're not perfect. We make mistakes along the way, but we move quickly to correct them. But transparency and trust, that's what I wanted to see people feel about Cargill.
Another top concern in the Swiss population is food waste. Now here we recycle a lot of food, of course, a lot of leftovers, but still, how do you see this problem and how can we improve every ordinary citizen in the world?
It's a worldwide problem, as you mentioned, Martina, and I think there's some statistic like a third of all food that is produced goes to waste. And if you go to the United States, you see portion sizes that are really more than a single person could eat. So we have formed some NGO joint ventures. We have something in Brazil called Gastromotiva, which is a social gastronomy movement that is looking to reduce food waste, but at the same time help educate malnourished and lower income people about the nutritional benefits of food, and also try to get some of that waste, the food that isn't going to be consumed, to where it's needed and where people are hungry.
Where do you see the biggest hotspots in the world right now when it comes to food and the lack of food? Obviously, Africa is a big concern, but where do you actually want to take some action maybe as well to help populations?
Yeah, I think Africa is certainly at the top of the list. We have a cocoa and chocolate business in Western Africa. We have a very small presence in Kenya. We have some presence in Egypt as well as South Africa. But that's where I think the most upside is in terms of creating food security, self-sufficiency, access to safe, affordable, and nutritious food. I think that's where a lot of companies like ours need to spend more time.
Talking about chocolate, we are here in Switzerland. It's one of the kingdoms of chocolate.
It is.
And also cheese, of course. You have lived in Geneva. What is your favorite Swiss food? Fondue or chocolate
I
or
liked them
anything
all.
else?
I mean, I loved Emmenthal cheese, and I loved going to the grocery store and talk about choices between yogurt, cheese, and chocolate. You could spend days deciding which one you like, but that's one of the wonderful things about your country.
And it's a luxury as well, the superflux that we have here in the country. Dave, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Martina.